already had a brief introduction about the issue that we have in Balochistan and about yourself. And we would like to thank you for sparing your time. And we would, in today's event, we are trying to understand the issues that we have in Balochistan, the historical perspective, and how Indian diaspora or Indian community be helpful in this whole issue, and how Baloch diaspora that is based in Australia or other part of the world, how they can help for this cause. So we would like to hear your thoughts on this. After your 20 minutes or 30 minutes of your talk, we can go for question and answers from different cities that we have here.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for inviting me. Namaskar. Assalamu alaikum. I think it's morning over there. So it's a subject that few people in India have heard of, even though there is a Baloch population both in Gujarat and in Maharashtra and even in south of it, in the areas which would be Mysore and those areas. Historically, the Baloch have been quite integrated with the Indian population. You might be surprised, Balesh Bhai, to know that at a time the East India Company was contained on the island of Mumbai. It was surrounded on all sides by the Baloch Makran Navy, and they were only saved by the army of Aurangzeb, the Mughal emperor. I'm talking of the late 1600s. So there is a connection, but unfortunately, I would suggest to you that because of the partition of Punjab and Bengal, I don't call it the partition of India, a very corrective, politically correct narrative of history has been taught in India, primarily the objective being not to sort of create more division or more conflict within the post-partition period, when you have to give credit to a lot of the people who were in government at the time, that the slaughter that took place on the Pakistan side of the border really didn't happen on the Indian side, though you are never told. I give you one example, that both Lahore and Karachi were Hindu majority cities, and after partition there was hardly any Hindu who lived there. Today you cannot find any Indian city, whether it's Delhi or Mumbai or Calcutta or even Chennai, that doesn't have about 10 to 20% of its urban population that is Muslim. And this is something that has not been talked about, perhaps because at the time, during the 50s and 60s, it wasn't really appropriate to talk about. There was a Cold War. India had to find a place within the non-aligned nations, had to look for friends like Nasser and Tito. And during that time, the issue of Balochistan was largely forgotten and erased, literally erased from the Indian education system, from the psyche. Even the Indian Baloch population sort of gave up on their identity, and they were mostly known, the last name Makrani was used. You still have a large population that you call Shidi, and people think they are from Ethiopia, but they're not from there. They are from the Makran coast. Gwadar in those areas had a very large slave trade population. The Arabs, when they had access to that, the slaves were brought in from East Africa, which is called Zanzibar, from the word Zanj, and they were sold over there. So today in southern Balochistan, I would say close to 10 to 15% of the population there is African. And they are the same when you say the populations of Gujarat or near Surat, there are black Gujarati population. They are all essentially from Balochistan. Now, to understand what's going on right now as we speak, there is a small city in Balochistan called Turbat, where the Pakistan military has surrounded the home of a Baloch activist and has literally laid siege. For lack of a better word, siege sounds, as if Vienna has been surrounded by the Ottomans. But the Pakistan military has surrounded this housing compound, which has 5 women and 2 children locked up inside now. I think it is in its 4th day. And these 2 children, a 5 and a 10-year-old, along with the 5 women locked up inside, epitomize the attitude of the Pakistani, again, for lack of a better word, the Punjabi colonial mentality that suggests that they are the conquerors and they are the rulers of the land, and the Baloch or the Sindhi or the Pashtun or the Gujarati-speaking Karachi population or everyone else, including, if you recall, in the 70s, what is now Bangladesh, were always considered the colonial subjects of Pakistan's elite military generals, who are almost 90% of Punjabi Muslim background. So that is very necessary to understand the complexity of the problem. Now, coming back, I'd have to go back a little few years. Many of you were not even born in the 70s, I would guess, but I'm going to take you back to the 1930s. And 1936 is a crucial period because that's the time that the ruler of the state of Kalat, which had nothing to do with India, which had its own treaties with Whitehall, which is where the British Colonial Office operated. They had mutual treaties under which Kalat was a protectorate of Great Britain. And the ruler of Kalat at the time hired Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who was a barrister, a lawyer, and hired him as his own advisor. And in his own autobiography, as well as Mr. Jinnah's words, Kalat had absolutely nothing to do with the framework within which India, the United India, was trying to achieve self-rule or dominion status or independence. Mr. Jinnah was hired by the king of Kalat, or the ruler of Kalat, and the 2 houses of parliament. By the way, Balochistan, or the state of Kalat, had its own constitution. It had its own flag, which you can see there in the background in Melbourne. It had its upper house of parliament, which was probably the House of Lords, Jahan Nawab or the Sardars would sit. And then it had an elected house, a lower house, in which the leader at that time was Mir Vosbux Bizinjo, who was part of the Indian National Congress, to some degree connected to the Communist Party of India, CPI, at the time. And Mr. Jinnah, in 1946, took the case of the state of Kalat to the commission that came from Great Britain after the Second World War and presented the case to declare the state of Kalat as an independent country. And the payment that Mr. Jinnah took was his own weight in gold. This is so medieval, and so, I mean, people say Jinnah acted out of, great moral high standards. He took 90 pounds of 20-carat gold, sat in a tarazu or whatever you call it on scales, and took that gold as the fee. I doubt if he paid his income tax on that. It was not possible. But he got the independent state of Kalat recognized. However, after Kalat won its independence, that is a week before India and Pakistan got their independence, the state of Kalat or Balochistan had an embassy in Karachi, which was the capital of the newly formed state of Kalat. And the Pakistan army, after having a failure in invading the state of Jammu and Kashmir, turned its guns on the state of Kalat on March 28, invaded it, led by Major General Akbar Khan, who was later tried under a conspiracy case. They attacked the capital, they destroyed the fort, and the younger brother of the ruler had to escape and went to Afghanistan, while the older brother, the ruler of the state of Kalat, was brought to Karachi and literally at gunpoint had to sign off his entire country to the Pakistan army. And in his own autobiography written in 1975, the Khan of Kalat says that even after that, all promises made to him were relinquished, and he was literally put as subservient to a Pakistani civil service officer from the Punjabi elite. And very soon, even the province of Balochistan was liquidated and merged into a unit called West Pakistan. So the fight for Balochistan independence, there have been 5 wars. In 1948, the younger brother of the Khan of Kalat went to Afghanistan, started a rebellion, failed, was arrested, sentenced to jail for about 10 years. In 1958, again, the war was fought. In the early 60s, some of you might not be familiar with the name, but there was a gentleman called General Shroff. We know him as Sheru Murray. He led the war against Ayub Khan's army. And later, by the way, he got refuge in Mumbai, where he was treated. In 73, after the breakup of Pakistan, and after what I say, Pakistan renamed itself as Bangladesh, the Pakistan military, as soon as they were released from imprisonment by the Indians, straight away launched an attack on Balochistan, dismissed an elected government whose chief minister, by the way, still alive, Sardar Ataullah Mengal. The governor at the time, Mir Gospels Bizinjo, the same gentleman who traveled to Delhi, went to see Jawaharlal Nehru and Maulana Azad and said, we want to accede to the Indian dominion. Please take us in. And unfortunately, I don't know who prevailed. I think it was Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, who had a very bigoted, racist view of the Muslims who lived in the hinterland. He had a great perspective on Muslims of the Urdu-speaking areas, which is UP and Bihar. He thought they were great people, whereas Punjabis or Pashtuns or the Bacha Khan types or he had a very low opinion of them, and some of his writings indicate that. He rejected the ascension of Balochistan to India. This was subsequently announced on All India Radio, and then after a kerfuffle, Mr. V.P. Menon then announced that no, nothing like this happened. But I am an ear witness. I have talked to Mir Gospels Bizinjo, who in our conversations in the 70s, late 70s, said that yes, he did go to Delhi. And he said, we were devastated when the Indian elite said, no, we don't want you. And the reason the Indian establishment said they didn't want Balochistan to be part of India was because it's too far away. And Mir Bizinjo at that time reminded Maulana Azad and Jawaharlal Nehru that the Pakistanis rule East Pakistan, which is 1,000 miles away from Karachi, which was the capital. We are only 200 miles from Rajasthan's border, and you're saying we're too far away? Not only that, when Gwadar, the state, the amazing deep city port, the main port of Balochistan, which was owned and possessed by the Portuguese and later the Sultanate of Oman, it was the easternmost part of the Arab Empire. The Omanis wanted India to take it, and the Indians said, "Nahi chahiye bhai, hamare apne problem bahut hai." And it was taken by Pakistan. Today, it is India's biggest problem because it is a Chinese naval base at the mouth of the Straits of Hormuz, which guard all oil going in and out of the Persian Gulf. So this is a background within which the Baloch have been fighting, and virtually never, other than thank goodness for Prime Minister Modi, who has had the courage to speak about the unfortunate history of the Baloch people, who are incredibly brave. They are resourceful. They can survive on very little food for a very long time, and who know their mountains back and forth. And no amount of helicopter gunships or tanks or troops will destroy them. Every time you kill one Baloch, 10 more Baloch will come forward. And you must understand now that for the first time, the women of Balochistan are coming out. And if you see those pictures and you say, they are covering their faces not because they are bought into their own second-class status, as many Indian Muslim women and Pakistani women do by wearing the niqab. These Baloch women are covering their faces to hide their identity, because not only do they face rape and kidnapping and murder, but the sullying of their reputation by these barbaric generals who have occupied Balochistan. The corruption of the Pakistan army is to an extent. Now, wait for me, I'll just get you the right figure. One General Naveed Zaman has been asked to repay to the Pakistani exchequer 2,800 crore rupees that they have taken just in the corruption that can be measured. So within the army authority that is corrupt, there's an outcry that some of the generals were more corrupt than the other generals. Much of this money is stored in Swiss bank accounts. It is involved, the same general is involved with the last head of the Pakistan military, General Kayani, who was prior to that the head of the ISI, which would be, I don't know what the equivalent would be in India, but it is the group of people who rule Pakistan. They are not elected, they are not appointed. Nobody knows who they are. Right now they are governed, they are led by a general called Zahirul Islam. I can tell you, anybody who heads the ISI today is more powerful than any other person on earth, because not only has he access to the nukes, he has a 1 million-man army at his command. He sells cornflakes, he sells cement, they sell handicrafts, they sell weapons. They are home to the world's top terrorists, whether it's Bin Laden. They have death squads run by the chief minister of Balochistan, a man who was elected by a mere 2% of the electorate. Only 2% of the people in Balochistan went to vote in the last election, and this guy became a chief minister. He has his private death squads in a similar manner to what you are now seeing in Bangladesh, of Jamaat-e-Islami people being hanged to death for their role in forming a death squad, civilian-operated death squads of the Pakistan military. In Bangladesh, they were called Al-Badr al-Shams, and they would go and kill any Bengali Muslim who was educated. The goal of the Pakistan military in East Pakistan was to destroy the intellectual class of the Bengali nationalists. The same thing is being done in Balochistan, where they're picking out doctors, business graduates, IT personnel, an artist, a singer, a poet, anyone you can put in the middle class of that could form the brainchild, the intellectual class of a future independent Balochistan. They have identified that we need to kill all these people. They have sold the land to the Chinese, and the Chinese couldn't give a damn about what happens to the Baloch. Their goal is to capture the mountains of gold. And when I say mountains of gold, I don't mean using a parable or something. The copper mines and the gold mines of Balochistan are the focus of the entire world mining business, including where I live in Canada. They have a dispute going on because the Pakistanis have reneged on the contracts and sold everything to the Chinese. And the Chinese interest is to cut their supply lines from the South Pacific China Sea, where India has and the Philippines and everyone else has a conflict with China, to avoid going through the Straits of Malacca near Singapore or near Sri Lanka or across the Arabian Sea, but straight from Gwadar in a land route that will save 6,000 miles for China to import and export straight from Xinjiang down to Balochistan. The Pakistani attitude towards the Chinese is one of subservience and slavery. The Chinese can determine that there will be no Ramzan, halas, no Eid, go to hell, only 6 hours fasting. The Pakistanis will comply. Imagine if India would pass such a law, there would be bloodshed on the streets of Pakistan. But because China is the, how should I put it politely? Well, Pakistan fundamentally is a concubine, but it is a unique concubine that cheats on the very people who pay her. So Saudi Arabia pays her. United States of America has poured hundreds of billions of dollars since 1947 to Pakistan to keep it stable, and Pakistan has always bitten back, and it's the worst enemy of the United States. You cannot find a single Pakistani who's not anti-American. And it tells you, by Pakistani, I mean the people in Punjab and your Indian refugees who settle down in Karachi. These are the two classes that are hostile to America, and that forms the basis of their worldview, because there is a world of Islam and there is a world of the kuffar. The Indians, the Hindus, by the way, they are the worst of the kuffar. Then there are Jews, then there are Christians, then there are Americans. But the people most hostile to the Muslims, who are the Chinese, are respected because they give money. So there's $46 billion from the Chinese. So the Pakistanis have no problem whatsoever. China could kill every Muslim in China, and Pakistan would say, oops, no problem. So it's a country ruled by a class of people who are corrupt, who are incapable of ever speaking the truth, and their horror is being inflicted on a people who are the noble people of Balochistan, who are the exact opposite, because a Baloch will find it very difficult to lie to your face. I have lived in Balochistan. I'm not a Baloch myself, by the way. I'm a Punjabi Muslim, but I've lived in the prisons in Balochistan, a prison on a hilltop called Mach. Many of the Indian Congress leaders were imprisoned over there. It used to be one place you couldn't escape. So I owe something to my Baloch friends, since I've been part of their struggle since 1967. But the character of the Baloch, and I'm risking stereotyping people, but it's an easier argument to make, because you don't run into the Baloch who are not dignified. And it's very difficult to find anyone dignified in the Pakistani Punjabi upper class that runs that country. They fooled India, they fooled America, they fooled China, they fooled Iran, Saudi. Everyone has been ripped apart by this class of people who have destroyed contemporary society by nurturing terrorism and inflicting it on India, in Afghanistan, in Bangladesh, in Iran. You name it, every terrorist, whether he hits Dhaka or Mumbai or Pathankot or Kabul, comes from Pakistan. And yet you have to understand that this enemy of humanity is so conniving and so smart that John Kerry has to mumble few words of respect to every Pakistani he meets. Even Mr. Obama has the audacity to lecture India on tolerance, but then he's gone to Saudi Arabia, which is the epitome of intolerance. And yet, neither India nor anywhere in the world can ever raise a finger and speak about Saudi Arabia. The worst country on earth. I've lived there 10 years. It's an apartheid, racist place. where everyone is judged based on his or her skin color or the color of their passport or their background. If you are of Indian background, the words associated with you are horrific. It's unbelievable. Black people are addressed as Ya Abdi, literally meaning come my slave. So we are dealing with a combination of very evil forces, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, and China. This combination can bring disaster to the world. But the people who can disrupt this are the brave people of Balochistan. Because if Balochistan becomes independent, trust me, the entire edifice of this notion of the Islamic State disappears. Because the Baloch and sensible people of Sindh and Bacha Khans, Pakhtuns, believe Islam to be a moral compass. The rest of these guys think of Islam as a political tool through which they can dominate, for lack of a better word again, दादागिरी मचाई भी अपनी, जिसको चाहे उड़ा दे, attack कर दे. There is nobody willing to stand up to them. And now they've got these nukes that they can say, every time you will hear a Pakistani debate with an Indian, the guy will come up, हमारे पास atom bomb है. Which civilized place threatens the rest of the world all the time by saying, I have a nuclear bomb? And where do you think they test the nuclear bombs? In Balochistan. Where do you think the radiation fallout is causing young children to die of cancer? It's Balochistan. Recently, a 21-year-old medical student in Karachi, a Baloch, died, and he epitomized this vast epidemic of leukemia in Balochistan. Young children are dying because, unlike other places where a nuclear bomb is tested, people take care of what is in the surrounding areas. The Pakistani nuclear tests done in Balochistan were done and the people left. The amount of deformities that have taken place, even 100 generations will not forgive nor forget the loss of innocence of the Baloch people, that for no rhyme or reason somebody came from outside and tested a nuclear bomb and then went away. And thousands of young kids are with stunted hands, distorted faces, and the world is silent. You know why the world is silent? Because any journalist who goes to Balochistan is attacked or killed. Carlotta Gall has written this book. I have a copy over here, which actually, the moment she entered Quetta, a woman was beaten up by the ISI. Another journalist who wrote for The Guardian and wrote a long story on the fight in Balochistan had to stop writing about the entire region. He now only writes about North Africa. You think the ISI has long hands only in Pathankot or Dhaka? The ISI operates in Toronto here, in our members of parliament's offices, at the Congress. Barack Obama has just appointed a senior judge in the Superior Court, again a Pakistani Canadian. Look at Huma Abedin, the Deputy Chief of Staff of Hillary Clinton. Linked to, her mother is Indian Muslim, father was Pakistani Muslim. She's a member of the Muslim Sisterhood. That is only reserved for the wives of the Muslim Brotherhood Central Committee. This Indian Muslim woman sits in Riyadh, is running a campus that inculcates Wahhabi radical Islam around the world through women, and Huma Abedin takes Hillary Clinton over there. I'm digressing for a moment, but what I'm trying to suggest to you, that the way to stop this evil is the independence of the Republic of Balochistan. Not only because the Baloch deserve an independent country, but because India needs to rectify the mistake made in 1947 when they rejected the Karat state's request that they accede to the Republic of India. That was, how should I say, as Maulana Azad is such a hero of the Indians. I read what he's written about people in western part of India, and he had no respect for the Baloch or for the Pashtuns or the Sindhis. He thought these were ruffians, you know, on the sidelines. The only cultured people that exist are the ones who speak Urdu, and I still feel that in India, if you speak Urdu, you're suddenly considered to be very educated and enlightened. But if you speak Punjabi, you're considered to be, you know, if you speak Gujarati, you're a good businessman. If you speak Punjabi, you're a ruffian, you know. So that has to be rectified, and it can only be done by making sure that the brave step of courage taken by your Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, is not compromised by the fraud and evil nature of Pakistan and their agents in India. Because what you think Pakistan is doing in Jammu and Kashmir, I feel, I might be wrong, that it's a diversionary tactic. Pakistan is deadly scared of what has happened as a result of Prime Minister Modi's raising of the Balochistan issue. And I know the mentality of the ruling class of Pakistan. They will do everything possible to annihilate the people of Balochistan and then say, let's have a referendum and there will be no population. If there is no population in Balochistan and it is settled by Urdu-speaking or Punjabi-speaking Pakistanis who take up all the coastline, who's going to win the referendum? The ability of Pakistanis to depopulate the Balochistan cities is so devious. 2 days ago, they issued a meteorological office alert saying all the population in the cities of Pasni, Gwadar, Omara, and the Lasbela coast should evacuate the cities because a tsunami is coming. Now, can you imagine if these people believed the propaganda of Pakistan and evacuated the cities? They wouldn't be allowed to come back. And the Baloch are not fools. They're giving their lives for their country. Those of us whose parents and grandparents fought for the Indian independence movement, there were very few Bhagat Singhs in our lives. I can tell you that today in Balochistan, there are at least 10,000 Bhagat Singhs who have died for their own freedom. They fight not for money, they fight not for religion, they fight for a secular, liberal democracy on the pattern of the Constitution of India. They see themselves as allies of Indian democracy and secularism, and they are proud of their ancestry. They are proud of the fact that there's a Hindu population that they protect, that there's a Zikri population which the Pakistanis want to destroy, which is an indigenous religion to the Baloch people. Many of you might not be familiar with the Zikri faith, but the Pakistanis want to do what would be called an ethnic cleansing of any other people other than Muslims in that area. And the Baloch will never, ever surrender to the communalism that Muhammad Ali Jinnah fanned in UP, Bihar, Bengal, and Punjab. That is not the type of society that the Baloch will ever agree to. Balochistan, as a free country, the moment it becomes independent, will be the end of the evil Republic of Pakistan. You have to understand that Pakistan is not a country. Number one, it is an acronym. Number two, it is a state of mind. It is a state of mind where people who've never been to Pakistan can be Pakistanis. And you know what I mean. Anyway, I think I've spoken long enough. I'm sure many of you have questions. So I thank you very much again for inviting me to speak to you. I've never even had a phone call ever to Australia. So for me, looking down under, it seems maybe too far away south of the equator. But thank you very much. Take care. Jai Hind.
Tarekji, thanks a lot for your amazing address and And yeah, even the Down Under is quite happy to have you on this important topic. Now, we do have number of questions, and audience has already started to write down their questions. We'll start with Melbourne, who have a number of questions. And actually, I would like to let you know that there are a number of people from Balochistan are in Melbourne as well as in Sydney. So I'll hand it over to Melbourne.
Excellent, राजा, कैसे हो सब? ठीक हो?
जी जी, सब बढ़िया, बिल्कुल।
बिल्कुल।
कैसे हैं तारिक जी आप?
बस ठीक ठाक है।
मेरा नाम कुशाग्र भटनागर है और मैं यहाँ पे OFBJP विक्टोरिया चैप्टर का कार्य संभाल रहा हूँ। और आपकी भी पूरी बात सुनी हमने, एंड यहाँ पे जो ऑडियंस है पूरी इंथ्रॉल्ड है आपकी पूरी बात से। और मेरा क्वेश्चन ये है आपसे कि अभी देखिए, मोदी जी ने लाल किले पे बात तो कह दी बलूचिस्तान पे, बट अब इंडियन डायस्पोरा फिजिकली और इकोनॉमिकली या पॉलिटिकली क्या एक्चुअल टैंजिबल फॉर्म में कुछ कर सकता है बलूच कॉज को मजबूती देने के लिए? और इसमें अभी रिसेंटली यहूदा गिल्ली भी बलूच कॉज की बात उठाई है, तो क्या एक इंटरनेशनल लेवल पे इंडियन कम्युनिटी एसोसिएट होकर व्हाट एग्जैक्टली टैंजिबल थिंग टू सपोर्ट बलूच कॉज?
अच्छा, टैंजिबल आपने कहा। मैं आमतौर पे मैंने जो इंडियन डायस्पोरा को देखा है, वो सब के सब CEO बनना चाहते हैं, उनको सियासत में ज्यादा इन्वॉल्व नहीं है। ये मेरी पिक्चर। आप देखिए, अगर यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स को देखें कि पाकिस्तानी जितने भी हैं वो इन्वॉल्व होते हैं पूरी इंटरनेशनल जिहाद में। हिंदुस्तानी जितने हैं वो कहते हैं कि देखिए गूगल का चेयर हमारा है, माइक्रोसॉफ्ट का CEO हमारा है, ये सब है। You will have to start believing in the greatness of Indian civilization for yourself. Civilization does not come with richness of how much money you have. Civilization comes out of how much wisdom you can share with the rest of the world. बलोचिस्तान के लिए प्रैक्टिकल मेजर क्या करना? आप जब बलोच आपसे कहें कि आज आओ पाकिस्तान एम्बेसी के सामने जरा हमारा साथ दो, तो हर 10 बलोच के लिए एक तो कोई आपका हिंदुस्तानी होना चाहिए ना साथ। इतना भी स्टेप हो जाएगा तो इनके दिल बड़े हो जाएंगे। यहां कुर्दिस्तान इज अनदर इशू। कुर्दों का जब भी इशू होता है, मेरा तो कोई ताल्लुक नहीं, मैं उनके साथ जाता हूं, मिल जाता हूं। एक आध वीकेंड अपना इनके लिए कर दें एंड ट्राई टू अंडरस्टैंड इट। अपने दोस्तों से कहे कि भाई अब वक्त आया है किसी की मदद करने का। आप 5000 साल पुरानी सिविलाइजेशन को के वारिस हैं, यू हैव इनहेरिटेड इट। कुछ तो वापस देना होगा ना आपको। अमन की, शांति की बात कर रहे हैं आप बात कर रहे हैं कि वो सोसाइटी जिन्होंने पहाड़ काट के मंदिर बना दिए, उनमें से जो गुप्ता डायनेस्टी यानी जब 6th सेंचुरी में खत्म हो रही थी, तब अरब अपना डबल स्टोरीड घर बना रहे थे। तो हम जो हिंदुस्तान के मुसलमान हैं, हम को ये चाहिए कि हम अपने 5000 साल को ओन करें, ना सिर्फ कि किसी उज़्बेक या तैमूर या इधर उधर जाए। लेकिन ये इंडिया के मुसलमानों का काम है। जो नॉन मुस्लिम इंडियन है, दे हैव अ बिगर रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी कि जो गलती 47 में हुई उसका what would be the right word? How would you rectify that? By reaching out. That's the only thing. Even your positive thinking will help you out. I hope that was not very ambiguous. I think if I would be in your place, I'd say ये पता नहीं क्या कह रहा है, समझ नहीं आई बात।
नहीं, बिल्कुल आपने सही बात कही। इनफैक्ट यू हैव जस्ट पुट वर्ड्स इनटू आवर सबकॉन्शियस थॉट्स, जो हमारे दिलों और दिमाग में चलते हैं, वो आपने बाहर निकाल दिए।
आपके दिल में और दिमाग में कीड़ा छू दे।
जी, अब मैं आप इंट्रोड्यूस कराना चाहूंगा जो यू विल वेरी हैप्पी टू मीट हिम।
मैं मीर बलोच, प्रेसिडेंट ऑफ बलोचिया। सर कैसे हैं आप?
अरे ठीक है, बीएनएम वाले बैठे हैं भाई।
बस सर बीएनएम वाले बैठे हुए मुंह छुपा के। आप
हमारे
फीमेल
टोरंटो में 15-20 लोग हैं आप बीएनएम के।
तो यही आप फीमेल्स का जिक्र कर रहे थे कि वो अपना फेस छुपाते हैं। हम मेल हो के भी पीछे, आपको पता है पिरजम बलोच के घर में जो। तो मेरा यही क्वेश्चन है, मोदी जी ने तो कह दिया एक, फिर उनके बाद भी शोर शराबा हो गया। पूरी दुनिया के जो महज़िब ममालिक हैं उनका भी तो किरदार होना चाहिए कि वो भी बलोच काज को सपोर्ट करें। उसके लिए हम मेलबर्न में बैठ के, ऑस्ट्रेलिया में बैठ के हमारा क्या रोल होना चाहिए? हम कैसे
मैं आपको
पूरी
सजेशन,
दुनिया के दरवाजे खटखटा के।
नहीं आप बनाएं ऑस्ट्रेलियन फ्रेंड्स ऑफ बलूचिस्तान। आप सब तो अब ऑस्ट्रेलियन हो गए ना, पीछे आपकी एंसेस्ट्री। और आपको तो पता है कि ऑस्ट्रेलिया और बलूचिस्तान का तो बड़ा पुराना ताल्लुक है। जितने ऑस्ट्रेलिया के ये जो ऊंट हैं ये तो बलूचिस्तान से ही आए ना। तो आपका और उनका तो ताल्लुक बड़ा पुराना, कम से कम 200 साल पुराना है। तो आप अपने इंडियन दोस्तों के साथ, पाकिस्तानी भी होंगे कुछ थोड़े बहुत तो समझदार होते ही हैं, एमक्यूएम वालों से इधर उधर सबको करके ऑस्ट्रेलियन फ्रेंड्स ऑफ बलूचिस्तान बनाइए। और जिस मुल्क में चौथी बड़ी पार्टी का लीडर लंदन में बैठ के कहता है पाकिस्तान मुर्दाबाद, तो उसको कुछ तो समझ में आई होगी ना अल्ताफ हुसैन को। आपके लीडर देखिए, हमल हैं, हैदर हैं, आपके बीआरपी वाले जो हैं सरदार अपने नवाब साहब बरहमदाग हैं, मेहरान मरी हैं। बड़े बड़े लोग, समझदार लोग इस वक्त समझ रहे हैं कि व्हाट इज अ सेक्युलर लिबरल डेमोक्रेसी। सेक्युलर लिबरल डेमोक्रेसी इज इंडिया फॉर यू, नॉट ऑस्ट्रेलिया और कनाडा। ये घर की मुर्गी दाल बराबर का मसला होता है। आप इसको समझें कि द इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन को पढ़िए, लेकिन डू फॉर्म एन ऑस्ट्रेलियन फ्रेंड्स ऑफ बलूचिस्तान। यानी आज आप 4 शहरों में सुन रहे हैं ये बात सब, अगर इसके बाद आप 20 लोगों की ऑस्ट्रेलियन फ्रेंड्स ऑफ बलूचिस्तान बना दें तो इट विल बी वर्थ वाइल। अगर इसके बाद जाके आप कोई ऑस्ट्रेलियन रग्बी का मैच देखना चाहते हैं और भूल जाएं तो फिर तो जाया हो गया सब कुछ। तो डू समथिंग पॉजिटिव। आज के बाद आप लोग बनाएं, बालाजी से कहें कि वो बनाएं ऑस्ट्रेलियन फ्रेंड्स ऑफ बलूचिस्तान, बात खत्म होगी। उसके बाद इनकलाब।
जी तारक जी, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। विल डेफिनेटली वर्क ऑन इन दिस डायरेक्शन टू form a Australian Friends of Balochistan.
Yes.
And there are a number of friends in Australia for Balochistan anyway. So we do have few questions in Sydney as well.
Okay.
जी.
Namaste Tarek Fatah ji.
जी नमस्ते.
It's from Sydney resident Mr. Arnesh.
Yes.
The question is, like, what could be the roadmap to take the independence movement ahead, like in present circumstances, as there are so many powerful stakeholders involved?
Yes.
And the second question is from a resident of Quetta.
Yes.
How can Durand line be abolished?
Okay. ये तो आपने जादू वाला क्वेश्चन कर दिया. Let me answer the first question first. Answer. The main stakeholder in this entire game is China. China's imperial interests today are going to cause havoc in your region. Whether it is mining interests, whether it is the Pacific region, whether it is Philippines and Vietnam having a problem with Chinese man-made islands in the South Pacific. China's imperial interests are a threat to all of Southeast Asia and the Australia and New Zealand area. So that you need to keep in mind. And who better to understand this than people of Indian ancestry? They know India's border is shared by China, but China is not India's neighbor. Ye yaad rakhiye. Even though Afghanistan and India do not share a border, but they are neighbors. The China and India are the competing powers of the future in what will be a democratic, liberal democracy or a regimented, top-down, authoritarian rule. Australia is the place where you can generate interest into this. You very rightly said that Mr. Modi came to the Red Fort and said it. You don't go to the Red Fort every day to make these proclamations. वो हमारे the late Canadian philosopher and thinker Marshall McLuhan said, the media is the message. तो जो मोदी साहब कह गए रेड फोर्ट पे, वो तो रेड फोर्ट हमेशा के लिए वो बात रहेगी. अब बलूचिस्तान को कोई नहीं डुबा सकता. ये आहिस्ते गाड़ी चलेगी या तेज चलेगी, ये डिपेंड करता है नंबर ऑफ फैक्टर्स. डोंट हैव टू मेनी एक्सपेक्टेशंस के मोदी साहब को जादू कर देंगे तो बलूचिस्तान बन जाएगा. उन्होंने इशारा दे दिया, उन्होंने झलक दे दी. बाकी हम लोगों का काम है कि हम सच और झूठ की जंग में कैसे सच को ऊपर लाएं. आपका इंडिया का मोटो मैं भूल रहा हूं, वो एक टीवी शो भी होता था उस नाम का,
सत्यमेव जयते.
जी जी भैया, आप तो सच की लड़ाई से अपने आप को जुदा ही नहीं कर सकते. ये तो आपके वो विरसे में है. इट इज योर ड्यूटी एंड योर फ्यूचर. बाकी दुनिया का हर मुल्क झूठ बोले, कुछ करे, हिंदुस्तान के आदमी को सच की लड़ाई लड़नी है. ये उसके विरसे की बात है. ये होगा. जहां तक आपने ड्यूरेंट लाइन की बात की, ड्यूरेंट लाइन अंग्रेज जिसने वो जगह देखी नहीं थी उसने लाइन बना के, अगर सीधी लाइन भी बनाता तो मैं उसको कुछ मार्क्स देता, जैसे मिडिल ईस्ट में किया. इतनी टेढ़ी ऊपर नीचे की लाइन है, किसी को पता ही नहीं है कि वो बॉर्डर है कहां. और अफगानिस्तान और पाकिस्तान का मैं आपको प्रिडिक्ट करूं कि जिस दिन पाकिस्तान टूटेगा तो अफगानिस्तान का ईस्टर्न बॉर्डर होगा द इंडस रिवर. और ये हमेशा से हिंदुस्तान और अफगानिस्तान का जो बॉर्डर था वो दरियाए सिंध के मशरिक के हिस्से में हिंदुस्तान आता था और उसके वेस्ट कोस्ट के ऊपर अफगान और ये पश्तून इलाके थे. ये तो अंग्रेज ने पिशावर को काट के इस तरफ कर दिया. It is an aberration of history that will disappear in due course of time. As soon as Balochistan is independent, in whatever form, all these problems will start solving on their own. The people who live in Pakistan today will get freedom for the first time after 1947, once the curse of Pakistan is lifted on them. Because there was never a Pakistan and there will never be a Pakistan in the future. आज से 200-300 साल बाद लोग कहेंगे कि ये बीच में कोई 100 साल का पीरियड आया था, एक अजीब सा पाकिस्तान बना था और उसके बाद टूट के टुकड़े टुकड़े हो गया. जैसे भूटान इंडिया का नेबर है, नेपाल है, वैसे ही सिंध होगा, वैसे ही पंजाब होगा या बलूचिस्तान होगा. तो ये विरसे में आपका श्रीलंका भी नेबर है. आप you have interest in Myanmar as well. अदन से भी आपका ताल्लुक है. तो इंडियन सिविलाइजेशन डजंट नेसेसरली मीन कि आपकी फौजों का वह प्रेजेंस हो. आपकी सिविलाइजेशन वहां मौजूद होगी, वो खुद ही फ्रीडम और लिबर्टी उसमें आएगी. कुछ आप अपने आप को गरीबों से मोहब्बत कर लें और कुछ दुनिया आपसे कर ले तो मसले तो सॉल्व हो जाएंगे.
जी, thanks a lot, Tarek ji. There is one question I wanted to ask, and this is regarding not only Pakistan's involvement in Balochistan, but also the whole narrative that you are saying that पाकिस्तान जिस तरीके से काबिज होता है सिंध पे या बलूचिस्तान पे, या जिस तरीके से वो दहशतगर्दी को बढ़ावा देता है, अगर पॉलिटिकल बाउंड्रीज रीड्रॉ भी होती हैं और सिंध और बलूचिस्तान अलग भी होते हैं, तब भी जो आवाम है जिनके दिमाग में जो वहाबिज्म है या जो भी इसकी वजह रही हैं, उसमें कैसे बदलाव हो सकता है, या उसमें कल को अगर आज का जो पाकिस्तान कल वो इस सूरत में ना हो, वो 4 अलग मुल्कों की सूरत में हो या उनके नाम अलग हों, लेकिन वो जो पॉपुलेशन है और जो पॉपुलेशन के दिमाग में है उसमें बदलाव की उम्मीद है, या पॉलिटिकल सिचुएशन चेंज होने से वो भी बदलेगा?
देखिए, ये तो बदनसीबी है हमारी के हिंदुस्तान से ही कॉन्सेप्ट निकला है इस्लामिक स्टेट का. अगर 1903 में या 1913 में टैगोर की जगह मोहम्मद इकबाल को नोबेल प्राइज मिल जाता तो आज ये मुसीबत नहीं होती। वो ऐसा बदबख्त किस्म का शायर था, उसने अपनी ही पोइट्री की नकल करके इस्लामिक तराना बनाया। उसी शख्स ने जिसने कहा सारे जहां से अच्छा हिंदुस्तान हमारा है, उसने उसी को कॉपी करके कह दिया चीनो अरब हमारा, सारा जहां हमारा। तो वंस यू ब्रिंग इस्लामिक सुप्रीमेसी इनटू द मॉडर्न एरा, it is also a made in India project. The moment Pakistan disappears, you will find that this notion of an Islamic state disappears. There has never been an Islamic state in all of Islamic history. 1400 साल में, the day the Prophet Muhammad died, the Muslims started fighting each other. कहाँ का Islamic state sir? वो Umayyads were fighting the Abbasides. The Fatimids in Egypt, जो शिया मुल्क था मिस्र का, उसको सलाउद्दीन अयूबी ने आके वो दहशतगर्दी की कि those Egyptian Shias are today in India the Dawoodi Bohras. शायद आपको ना पता हो, हर एक को पनाह हिंदुस्तान में मिली। तो इस्लामिक स्टेट का कब कॉन्टेक्स्ट था? ये जो ऑटोमन एम्पायर था ये इस्लामिक स्टेट था। अब बताइए 600 साल हुकूमत करने के बाद मोरक्को से यमन तक वहां कोई भी, सोमालिया भी, कोई एक शख्स नहीं तुर्की जबान बोलता। हिंदुस्तान ने अदन पे यमन पे हुकूमत तो नहीं की, वहां हजरमौत में हिंदी बोलते हैं लोग। क्यों बोलते हैं? क्योंकि एक प्यार की जबान होती है, एक होती है धुतकार की जबान। ब्रिटेन्स रूल ओवर इंडिया, उसका रिमार्केबल फीचर ये है कि 50,000 सिविल सर्वेंट्स ने दुनिया की सबसे बड़ी इंग्लिश स्पीकिंग कंट्री बना दी। हमारे कानून भी उसी तरीके से डेमोक्रेसी इंट्रोड्यूस की। अगर अंग्रेज भी उसी तरह रूल करता है जैसे तैमूर रूल करता था या औरंगजेब करता था, तो हम अंग्रेजी जबान तो नहीं बोलते आज, हम तो उसको हेट करते। लेकिन वी ऑल लिव इन इंग्लिश स्पीकिंग कंट्रीज। हमारे कितने इंडियन जाके पोर्चुगल में या फ्रांस में, ऑल्दो पोर्चुगल का प्राइम मिनिस्टर इस वक्त इज ऑफ इंडियन बैकग्राउंड, तो आई एम कॉन्ट्रडिक्टिंग माई सेल्फ, बट स्टिल द क्वेश्चन इज दैट द फियर के इंस्टेड ऑफ one Pakistan there will be 4 Pakistans. There can never be another Pakistan. It is a major error. But उसमें आप एक बार, let me give you a background as to why the Pakistan was created. The day the Second World War ended on May 6th, 1945, Prime Minister Churchill's main concern was not of Europe. That very day he set up a committee to report back to him on Britain's interest in the Indian Ocean and in British India. And the British government asked the Indian National Congress कि हमको Western India में bases दें आप। When the Indian National Congress said nothing doing, मेनन साहब ने कहा go to hell, तब जाके 1946 की मई में Churchill and the British government approached Muhammad Ali Jinnah and they said no problem sir, base क्या पूरा मुल्क ले लीजिएगा। That is when Pakistan was created, to create a buffer state between the Soviet Union's Red Army and the Indian National Congress, which was very closely allied with the CPI. उन्होंने कहा ये बीच में बफर स्टेट बनाएंगे, ना रूस की फौज नीचे आ सकती ना इंडिया उनसे मिल सकता। तो ये तो हमारी बदनसीबी कि हमें फैक्ट्स नहीं पता है। ऑल दीज डॉक्यूमेंट्स बाय द वे, आपके प्रोफेसर नेरुला हैं, उन्होंने भी किताब लिखी है, आप अगर लंदन जाएं तो वहां म्यूजियम में आपको मिल जाएंगे सारे रिकॉर्ड्स जो लेटर्स लिखे थे चर्चिल साहब ने, now all are declassified. So it was the British interest that also made sure that Balochistan didn't become an independent country. अगर आप खान कलात की ऑटोबायोग्राफी पढ़ें, ही राइट्स के ये तो सब जो बलोच रिपब्लिकन्स थे, यानी जो आजादी चाहते थे, वो कहता है कि ये तो सब लेफ्टिस्ट थे, एंड ही वाज वरीड कि ये क्या होगा, हमारी नवाबी कहां जाएगी। So I can't guarantee, but I would suggest you look at the reasoning behind Pakistan's creation, and that situation doesn't exist anymore. Today we live in a world where the number one enemy to human civilization is ISIS, is the Islamic State, is Lashkar-e-Tayyiba, is Al-Qaeda, is आपके यहाँ सीमी है इंडिया के अंदर मुजाहिदीन ग्रुप है, JEM है, all of them are centered where? In Pakistan. Do you think Bin Laden couldn't have lived in Algeria? Why didn't he operate out of Pakistan? Why couldn't he have operated out of Sudan? We have to think about these things. That once you create a cesspool, people will use it as a toilet. Finish. ये नहीं होगा कि आप बनाए गटर बगीचा और वहां लोग आम की काश्त करने लग जाएं. ये तो नहीं हो सकता ना. तो जब आपने बनाया ही जहर का पौधा उगाया है तो उसमें से जहर ही निकलेगा. आप उस पौधे को काट दीजिए, जहर खत्म हो जाएगा.
जी, बहुत शुक्रिया. This is very clarifying. Now, Brisbane is going to ask few questions.
Namaste, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Namaste.
I can.
Brisbane. Namaste.
Oh, Brisbane. Oh.
Yes, my name is Gurudat. We have a few questions, but I'm going to ask you two questions. First question comes from Mayuti, who is a resident of Brisbane. The question is, what is the impact of China-Pakistan economic corridor on Balochistan freedom struggle? My second question is on Israel.
Let me answer the first. I'm 67, bhul jate hain yaar. The impact on the Balochistan struggle is both negative and positive. I'm fundamentally a Marxist. I understand history and its development through the interplay of economic forces. CPEC has driven a trigger that has made the Baloch people in Balochistan understand that their future is not with Chinese imperialism, that if there is cooperation, it is with people who respect them, not as slaves, but as fellow human beings. And in that, they only find common ground with Indians. So even though Chinese investment in CPEC is causing huge amount of loss of life and material and wealth is being looted from Balochistan, the same efforts are making the Baloch people conscious of their self-dignity, their self-respect, and who their friends are and who their enemies are. So it's a double-edged sword, but the road of history never goes backward. People don't go back. Any attempt to merge Chinese authoritarianism disguised as communism and merge it with Islamic fundamentalism, you can't have a halwa ka achar. I'm sorry. You know, halwa is meetha and achar is karwa. ये करेले का फालूदा नहीं बना सकते आप. So this is not going to work. And scientifically, morally, ethically, it is a formula for disaster. And out of this will emerge an independent Balochistan. You had a second question. Sorry.
Okay, thanks for that. Second question is, as you may have seen and heard in the last few days, eminent political personalities from Israel have been, speaking out in support of Baloch cause. Do you think Israel should and probably would assert its support? Perhaps Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu should make a statement announcing his support.
I don't think the Israelis understand anything east of Iran. I think Israelis are very Europeanized, westernized people. For them, anything east of Iran is exotic. Like they find India to be Goa, or they find Indonesia to be Bali. So for them, their understanding of India, of Pakistan, of the Baloch question, I have found it wanting. They are focusing on Iran, and Iran does not even have a catapult. यानी गुलेल भी नहीं है ईरान के पास. उनका हर वक्त मातम चल रहा होता है, ईरान इज टेररिस्ट, ईरान इज टेररिस्ट। अरे साथ में पाकिस्तान has got 200 nuclear bombs aimed at Israel, but Israel doesn't talk about Pakistan. Why? Because there's a heavy interest of Iranian expatriate Jews within Israeli society that want this Iran conflict to continue. I will tell you another thing. There is also an interest by some Arab countries to pit Iran versus India by showing maps of Balochistan that include Iranian Balochistan as part of Balochistan. It is very insidious. They're trying to bring these conflicts. So back to your question about Israel, I don't think, this is my opinion after meeting with many Israeli academics, if you go to Tel Aviv or Jerusalem, you will find no work done on any of the struggles of the people of, say, Kurdistan or Balochistan. You will find nobody knows anything about the Bangladesh War of Independence. You will find nothing. No one will ever talk of the 1857 War of Independence of India. उनको बेचारों को पता ही नहीं है, क्योंकि जो इंडिया से जूस जाके सेटल किए हैं इजराइल में, they think that they are cricket playing, you know, they are British sort of oriented Jews. They are not Indian. You won't find many Indian restaurants, by the way, even in where Indian Jews live in Israel. So there is unfortunately a huge gap between the understanding of Israel to talk about that. Then Israel has its own problems. Israel will have to first talk of getting rid of its occupation of the West Bank. ये तो नहीं हो सकता कि आप ऑक्यूपाई कर रहे हैं किसी को और दूसरे को कह रहे हैं भाई तुम अपनी ऑक्यूपेशन बंद करो. It doesn't work that way. You have to be principled. You know, it's like India went into Bangladesh, within 9 months, every Indian soldier left, right? Israel went into the West Bank in 1976. No, sorry, 1967.
It's 10 o'clock.
They haven't yet withdrawn from there. Even I concede Jerusalem should be the capital of Israel. I support Israel as a Jewish state. But there is no legal moral ground for Israel to be occupying Palestinian territory. So वहाँ गड़बड़ हो जाएगी. It might not work.
Now we can move to Melbourne.
Ji Tarek ji, as you said that the Israel may not work, but we're just exploring another model which might work, and I would like to know your thoughts on it. Well, in 1960, India and Pakistan signed Indus Valley Indus River agreement. So can India apply Pakistan on this particular agreement to support Baluch or any other cause which with regards to terrorism? So would that kind of a thing would work?
That would work if you don't talk about it. आप मेरे हाथ में दे, मैं नलका बंद कर देता हूं, खत्म हो जाएगी बात. The point is, if you see, many things can be done without saying things. Just a day before yesterday, I was on the Arnab Goswami show, and I told these Pakistani generals, you won't have water to drink, brother. Don't push your luck. You are dependent on India's goodwill, because India signed that treaty with Pakistan on very generous terms, primarily to make sure that India would not have to worry about Pakistani troops because it was facing problems from China. The 1962 war, it is just prior to that this happened. Now the water treaty, if I was anyone in India, I would start squeezing them. And if I was someone in Afghanistan, I would start building a dam on the Kabul River. Because the main waters in the Indus come from the Kabul River that flows into Attock at Khairabad, which is on the west side of the river Indus, where river Kabul hits it at a 90-degree angle. It's an amazing sight. You should, if you ever get a chance, you should see it. it's at literally 90 degrees, the one river comes and slams into the other side. If the Afghanistan government, the way they built a dam elsewhere with the aid of India, built a dam on the Kabul River, you won't even have to do anything with the Indus Water Treaty. वो खुद ही होश ठिकाने आ जाएंगे इनके.
Melbourne, next question.
Yep, next question is, we're just waiting for the person.
Hi, sir. My question is, a cornered Pakistan and a nuclear threshold. Where do you see this going? Pakistan is increasingly getting cornered.
No. Ask the question so I can understand it.
Pakistan is increasingly getting cornered. What will be their tolerance for use of nuclear weapons against, let's say, India and the Baloch people?
Well, fortunately for the Baloch, they don't live in large concentrations. Unfortunately for the Indians, the Pakistanis would have no qualms. I can tell you, you're dealing with a mad bunch of people whose desire in life is to die. You have to understand and get this. They think that life begins after death. You think life is an ongoing process that never ends. When you have religiously mad people with a nuclear bomb, you're dealing with a disaster that can happen anytime. How to resolve it? I'm not a geostrategic or a military person to handle. I am just scared that the Americans are becoming so incompetent that they can't even defeat ISIS or Al-Qaeda. How will they handle an edgy nuclear Pakistan where everyone is acting in a jihadi state of mind? Even during the Cold War, neither the Americans or the Russians ever threatened each other with a nuclear bomb. Pakistanis, you go to any talk show and the guy always says, "Hamare paas bomb hai, hum bomb maar denge." What sort of people talk like that? So you're not dealing with rational people. These people have gone mad with religion. Religion or Islam for them is not a moral compass. It is a political ideology, and their greatest desire is to conquer Delhi. That is probably why they will never hit Delhi. So Delhi में रहने वाले आराम से बैठे, वहाँ कुछ भी नहीं होगा. क्योंकि they imagine, you will never find a Pakistani who ever visits the first mosque of Islam that's in near Cochin in Kerala. Never. Not even Aurangzeb visited that mosque. No Mughal emperor, no ruler of Saudi Arabia has ever gone there. Why? Because they don't have an Islamic link, they have an imperial link. So for them, Islam is to conquer the world, destroy it, and then go to heaven. So these are people who you find in a transit lounge. You know, when you're traveling, you take a connecting flight to India, kahin Singapore mein rukte honge aap log. So transit lounge mein nobody cares who's cleaning the toilet. Everybody is looking at the next flight. What is the time to take the next flight? All of Pakistanis, religious mad people, are looking for the connecting flight to paradise, where the 72 virgins are waiting for them. उनसे हम कहते हैं यहीं डेट वेट कर ला करो यार, हमारी जान छोड़ो, जिस चक्कर में थोड़ी चुस्की उसकी विस्की पियो, ठंडे हो जाओ. But they've gone nuts. So no rational approach, no American can understand this. Trust me, if there is a Balochistan and if it's independent, the Baloch will deliver you from this torture of permanently mad people using an atom bomb. वो कहेंगे अपनी आर्मी और अपने एटम बम लेके पंजाब जाओ, भैया हमारी जान छोड़ो, हम सिंधु देश बनाएंगे, बलोचिस्तान बनाएंगे, हिंदुस्तान के साथ ट्रेड करेंगे, बॉलीवुड की फिल्में देखेंगे, अपना नाच गाना करेंगे, आराम से जिएंगे और जाके निजामुद्दीन में कवाली गाएंगे. इनका इस्लाम है जाके बम पहन के मर जाना. How can anyone put bombs on a child and send them to Quetta to blow up 100 lawyers. You can never send a child. You've seen the pictures of this young boy who was sent there, and then somebody called the phone and he blew up. So you can't have rational answers to irrational people. You need to understand their psychosis, and you need to understand who can defeat them. And the only people who can defeat the Pakistan military today is an independent state of Balochistan.
Tarek, the next question is related to this narrative of radicalization of Islam. There are two questions, and these questions are coming from our Baluch brother who is in Sydney.
Yes.
What he's asking is, there are a number of ways that radicalization is happening within in Pakistan, that is through madrasas. ISI is financing those madrasas, and of course you know the source of that money, and these madrasas are fueling that radicalization against Baluch, against Hazaras, and of course Hindu minorities and other minorities in Pakistan, and that is causing havoc. And also other sources of radicalization are like Zakir Naik's Peace TV, ironically named, and it is not only creating this issue in India but Pakistan as well, more so in Pakistan. Now, what do you think in all practicality could be the solution for these kind of issues of radicalization, or do you think there's no straightforward solution to this, because the source can be from Wahhabism?
You in Australia have seen Islamic radicals. You've seen that Lint Cafe killing. I don't know whether it was in Sydney or Melbourne, but
yeah, it was in Sydney. It was in Sydney.
Sydney, yes. So that guy didn't go to a madrasa. You think the American San Bernardino terrorists went to a madrasa? No. The most terrorists that you find are highly educated, born, and who the person who sliced off the head of Daniel Pearl. He was a graduate of the School of Oriental and African Studies in London. He was born in the UK. This notion that madrasa produces radicalism is not valid. It produces foot soldiers. To destroy radicalism, you have to fight the ideology. You have to end this nonsense that development will somehow change the mind. You think the number of billions of dollars that go into Jammu Kashmir has changed the mind of radicals over there? No. All of them get good education, subsidized food, subsidized transportation. They have seats in Indian universities. And what do they do in Jawaharlal Nehru University? They said, "Tukde tukde honge India ke, inshallah, inshallah." You heard those slogans. What Kunaiya didn't go to a madrasa. So madrasa is not the issue. The issue is our inability of people like Barack Obama to even utter the word Islamic terrorism. In 8 years, this one man has not been able to say Islamic terrorism is an issue. So wo nahi kar sakte, and if Hillary Clinton gets elected, we will have a nightmare, because these jihadis will be inside the White House.
So if not from madrasas, and you referred Western countries like America or Australia for that matter, and जो लिंट कैफे में जो वाकया हुआ था वो born Shia, Iranian Shia था जो कि convert in Sunni. That's the narrative, but there is no surety about that. No. So what is your recommendation, or what is your opinion about tackling this issue in Western countries where people are, or these radical people are educated, so-called educated, and coming from well-to-do families? Then how to deal with them, or how to deal with the source of radicalization among these people?
एक बड़ी आसान बात है, किसी हॉलीवुड की फिल्म में थी, या I don't know, it was in a series, Follow the Money. You will notice that every radical person's roots go back to funding by Saudi Arabia. As long as Saudi Arabia exists as a country where the Sultanate of Najd is occupying the kingdom of Hijaz, which again nobody talks about, this curse will continue. The ultimate object, if the Western countries are not bought over by Saudi sheikhs, the problem is every American ambassador can be bought by Pakistanis and Saudis. We do not have anyone in the United States like Roosevelt or JFK. Nothing is there. There is no Churchill. There's no Diefenbaker in Canada. You look at the Canadian Prime Minister, वो हर मौके पे shirt उतार देता है. You know, he thinks it's a party. Look at these people. They are not willing to fight ISIS in Syria. They're putting the troops in Latvia. So, हमारा problem ये है कि those who have the power have been bought over and purchased by the Saudis. That is why you will notice the Western world is more concerned about Iran. And Iran doesn't threaten anybody. But they all talk about Iran. Kyun? Because Saudis tell them to talk about that. As long as the West keeps talking about Iran is the problem, Iran is the problem, Hezbollah, Hezbollah, Saudi to bach jata hai. The entire ISIS is being created by Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Qatar. You have recruits from India who go there just to clean toilets. There are the most horrific laws have been enacted in Iraq and Syria. And who does America fight? Hafizul Assad's son in Syria. You think removing Gaddafi was the answer? You created a place for ISIS. So Saudi Arabia is giving money to idiotic Americans to play their part by giving money to their foundations. You will notice that every American ambassador to Pakistan, after retirement, becomes a lobbyist for Pakistan. मुफ्त में तो नहीं काम करता ना कोई भी, थोड़ा बहुत चंदा बंदा 1-2 million मिल ही जाता होगा ना. तो I remember one Indian defense scholar once was speaking, maybe it's the current NSA. He said, if they can buy for 1 crore, we can buy for 2 crore. But India अपनी कंजूसी तो खत्म करे ना, पैसा ही नहीं खर्च करते आप लोग, जहाँ आपको खर्च करना है. पाकिस्तान नोट छाप के दे देता. You know how much Indian money comes from Pakistani printed presses? Tens of thousands of crores. ये तो आपकी इकोनॉमी बड़ी है कि it doesn't have an effect. But if you need to fight it, and it is in India's interest, India will have to support the structures that are exposing this. And Mr. Modi is doing his job, but the rest of the politicians on the liberal left side in Congress and CPI and even Bengal ki jo Congress leader hain ya Tamil Nadu ke aapki chief minister hain, these people need to get involved and see the danger. I'm glad an all-party sort of meeting took place where Balochistan was raised and has gone to Jammu and Kashmir. But without recognizing that you're dealing with a very evil force in Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, you will not be able to tackle this.
One very quick and last question from Sydney, and that is from a journalist from Indian Telegraph here, Mr. Viswanathan. He's asking that has this issue of Balochistan being raised in United Nations ever? If not, how is it possible?
It has never been raised because most of the Baloch leaders cannot travel to the United States. Pakistan is such an effective player that none of the Baloch leaders in exile can enter the United States. All the corrupt generals of Pakistan live in the United States. Their children live there, but the people they are killing, the Americans will not allow them. So, the only way it can be raised, and I'm willing to go and do, 5 वक्त की नमाज पढ़ने के लिए तैयार हूं कि मोदी साहब जाके वहां जिक्र करें and raise the issue of the human rights atrocities that are being committed over there. जैसे मैंने आपको शुरू में बताया कि एक फैमिली तुर्बत में बैठी है 4 दिन से, पानी नहीं है, खाने को नहीं है, फौज ने घिरा हुआ. I think India will raise this issue, if not directly, in an indirect manner. Because it's difficult when you're working with the Americans. Americans have no understanding of the complexities. They have been a particular failure everywhere they've gone. So I think it will be raised this time, and I hope it is raised by Prime Minister Modi. If I was there, I would literally touch his feet and ask him, thank you for what you've done. But sir, just once mention the word Balochistan in the UN General Assembly, बाकी फिर काम हमारा.
So this is one of the most tangible things that India can do.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So
लाखों
one
लोगों की
last
दुआएं
round of
लगेंगी आप.
questions from Brisbane and Melbourne. Brisbane, can you start?
Sure. This question comes from Balochistan. The question is, Modi ji has made a statement in support of Balochistan struggle. What do you think should be the next step to keep the momentum going?
A very good question. It would be threefold. One is to allow Baloch refugees to settle in India. My Baloch friends who are stuck in Kathmandu and in Thailand and Dubai and elsewhere with no place to go, India should allow Baloch refugees and Baloch exiles and leaders the similar asylum that it allows the Dalai Lama and the Tibetan government in exile to do that. Once you allow the refugees, number two, you take it to the UN General Assembly and talk about it and put up a picture and say, this is the face of oppression that is being done and the world is silent. The authority and the credibility of Prime Minister Modi is such that the world will listen. Lastly, India should float the idea, just float the idea of a Balochistan government in exile in Delhi. आप देखिए उसके बाद कैसे पाकिस्तान को मिर्चें लगती हैं. And that will be a step that will make even our friends like Dr. Allah Nazar, who is fighting in the mountains of Balochistan, with hundreds of fighters. Sometimes they are injured, there is no hospital to take them. India should demand that the International Red Cross be allowed to enter and give aid to the injured Baloch insurgents who are fighting the Pakistan army. Nobody is speaking for them. Because the role of the Red Cross is to play a neutral part between warring armies. Imagine if you're a mountain and you are hit by Pakistani army. I have videos of Baloch fighters bleeding to death, still fighting. They die, they fight to die. They should be allowed, the Indian Red Cross should talk to the International Red Cross and said, there has to be an avenue to help these fighters and give them medical care. जब आप ये कहेंगे, हम जवाब सुनेंगे उन लोगों का जो इनको मार रहे हैं. उनकी शक्लों से नजर आ जाएगा कि वो कातिल हैं.
Ji, thanks. Next, last question from Melbourne.
Ji, Tarek ji, it's been a absolute delight hearing your views. I would like the last question, very light sort of thing.
जी जी.
We noticed that Baloch cultural dance, I think it's called Chap, is pretty much similar to Gujarat Dandiya. So, can there be any avenues for cultural? If Pakistani actors can come and join Indian film industry, why not Baloch people who also are very good looking? So, and I'm sure would be full of talent.
आप क्यों पाकिस्तानी?
It will have a very emotional connect.
नहीं सर, पाकिस्तानी एक्टर को आप क्यों आने देते हैं वहां? Tell them to go to hell. क्या आपने अमन की आशा का तमाशा बनाया हुआ? पंजाबियों को लेके आते हैं, आपके वो नाच गाना करते हैं. They are Hindu haters. They hate India and आपको बेवकूफ बना के पैसे कमा के लेके जाते हैं. You should say इंडिया में आना है सिर्फ बलोच या सिंधी आएगा. खत्म. देखिए क्या होता है फिर. डांडिया वांडिया क्या, पूरा कथक डांस करके दिखाएंगे जनाब? ऐसी क्या बात है? अब मुझे इजाजत दीजिए साहब, पानी पीने का टाइम नहीं है.
जी
Okay, sir. Thank you very much. Inshallah, Azad Balochistan. Zindabad.